Okay, so for assignment 2, the grid pay step assignment, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you refer back to the grid presentation that you should have already watched, and you're going to be picking 2 of these different grids, and you're going to be using an 11 by 17 sheet of paper. So you're picking 2 because you're going to have 2 sheets of paper. And if we're quarantined and you do not have access to 11 by 17, then go ahead and use an 8.5 by 11. You're going to need some magazines, any magazines, scissors, glue stick or tape, a ruler, and a pencil. And you're going to be making 2 different grids. So based on these, and I actually have them listed on the sheet as well. So let's say that you pick rule of thirds and not your typical. So you're going to draw lines on your paper to show the rule of thirds. So you're going to divide the paper in thirds, both vertically and horizontally, and that's the grid you're going to work with. And the not your typical, you're going to be drawing lines that are not in any kind of order. They're just kind of all over. So I asked you to put your name on the back of the paper. These are just instructions. You're going to go through the magazine. You're going to look for shapes. So think about how wide and how big your columns are. And think about hierarchy. So you want to make sure that you have some different elements there. Find a minimum of 5 to 6 elements to place on your grid. So 5 to 6 on each of the grids. So you're going to have 10 to 12 items. And I say 5 to 6 because I'm requiring 5. So they have to include 1 image and 4 blocks of type. So think about a title, a subtitle, and then 2 blocks of text. So the 2 blocks of text could be like 2 different columns, 2 separate pieces, or one could be a description for a photo, or just something else that might be a little different size. And then you can include a second image, which is that 6th piece if you want to. So keeping in mind hierarchy. So you spread your elements out on the page and then consider where they're going to go. Think about your grid, think about hierarchy, think about your audience. Stand back and make sure that there's a clear hierarchy and we're seeing what it is that you're intending us to see. Does our eye move around from element to element, or are we getting hung up on something because there's not enough pull from one element to the other because maybe one's like super huge and everything else is too small. And then I'll show you a couple of examples here. These are student examples. So this is supposed to be hierarchy. So this is the largest, and you could see the lines and you're supposed to. So this is the largest kind of area, but these are not very clear. Is this one next or these 2? So make sure if you're going to do hierarchical that you make it very clear which one's big and then which one's next. So when I look at this first, then I move up here, then here, and then these. So that's a little confusing because you probably don't want people to be jumping around everywhere. And don't feel like you have to fill everyone either. You don't need to do that. This would be not your typical. So you could see the lines kind of going everywhere. And, you know, thinking about, we look here first because it's colored and it's also the biggest and takes up the most space. But then we're looking at the title and this in red. Obviously, the color is really bringing our eye in. This is larger than this here. So you could see this is really considered 1 because this is 1 title. So 1, 2, 3, 4, they have an extra one. That's fine. If you need to have an extra one to really get your grid across, then that's perfectly fine. This is a 2 column, 1 column, and 2 columns. So pretty clear. They did a good job of kind of lining things up here. Not everybody does that, and I don't know if I have any pictures of examples of those, but this is pretty clear. This is not a complete grid. I'd rather see you draw like a box right here to make it show like you understand that it would be left justified and right justified on this 2 column grid. So, and then of course this is not lined up. So these items should be lined up So even if you need to draw like a little box, like make your little box a little bit bigger, just to kind of show me that you understand what that looks like. Here's another one that's not your typical. This person did a lot more. Um, so kind of thinking, I think they were just trying to like make it fit a little bit better within this space. So if you need to get creative like that, it's fine. I get the idea. This is really just practice to kind of see that you understand that grid. Thought I rotated this. Not sure why it didn't come out rotated, but you can see that this one has a large picture here, and then we have some different columns. So this looks like it's multi-column is what I would pretty much call that. I would have cut this off, cut the width a little bit shorter, and these should be lined up with the edge of this green, and this here should be lined up with that green. So just try and line your stuff up here. This one's a little confusing because it looks like not your typical, but there's also like this order to it. So I think you could call this one either modular or not your typical, but it still feels pretty lined up. And this is a 3 column. So 1, 2, 3. And obviously this picture goes across 2 and this one goes across 1, and that's fine. There's a lot of negative space, but I understand that you're working with the size of the magazine images. So this is it for assignment 2. This is what I'm looking for. And if we're not in class, then you could just take a picture of yours, just like I did here. I just took these on my table, my kitchen table. So you could just take a picture and submit it to assignment 2. I hope this was helpful.